episode of the Productized podcast. This is the podcast where innovators, geeks, creators, and entrepreneurs come to discuss impactful ideas. Our mission is to inspire people. And my name is André Marquet, and I'm your host. So, hey everyone. Today I'm talking with João Montenegro, an entrepreneur, technologist, designer, space enthusiast with over 10 years experience in building products and companies. He has worked with company builders, VCs, mentoring, and teaching at university level, and co-founded various businesses. João is an innate leader and collaborator with a drive to continuously inspire others. When he's not designing 3D printers, vehicles, and digital products and services, João spends his time doing amateur astronomy in inhospitable places, talking about the future with friends, and reading the National Geographic magazine. Welcome, João. How is it going? Are you back to Lisbon for good, or are you planning to go somewhere else?
Hey, Andrea, thank you for having me. Well, who knows? I think same for good at anything is a big commitment. I'm now in Lisbon, yes.
Yeah, you're actually from Portugal.
Yes, I'm from Portugal.
Okay, but the reason I'm asking is that you were in Dubai
Oh, yeah, recently, yeah.
recently doing the Space University.
Oh, no, actually, it was a presentation of the Space University project, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, basically, I was in Dubai very recently. And before, where I did the ISU program was in Strasbourg, in France.
In France. All right,
Yeah.
very well. So business, technology, design, space. Why you have such a range of interests in such diverse industries? And I'm actually curious if you have any favorite topic in which you feel more at ease, that you feel home.
It's a good question. Yeah. I would say that the oldest one in in that list is space. I was always obsessed with it since I was very young.
Where does it come from, that interest?
I mean, it's something I decided very consciously when I was around 10 years old.
Okay, very consciously.
Yeah, I had previous interests, and I decided they were not sustainable, and there was not a lot of source of information, and the world wasn't going that direction. So I decided I want to have more books about these things, and there's not enough. So I changed into space at the time, and I was actually on my way to become an astronomer. In the beginning, I studied physics engineering, but eventually I got into design because I was always very in parallel, liking a lot to make things and create things and design things.
You were 10 years old. Where is this coming from? Do you have parents in, doing this, or how
Well,
did you get this hook on space?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I've been lucky about a few things. My parents traveled when I was little, so we were in the United States for a while, visited a lot of nice museums back then. And I always had people, I mean, especially in my family, that that have a lot of interests. And I got a subscription to magazines when I was very young. You mentioned National Geographic, and it's kind of the oldest subscription I have. My grandfather gave it to me since I was a kid. And every now and then, Nat Geo has space articles, right? And a lot of technology articles. And I started to decide based on that. I was like, well, these articles appear more and more. It seems a good thing to
Still,
like.
right? I have kids on that age range. If I give them National Geographic, just whatever, just put it on. They just ditch it and go to their iPad and play Minecraft or something like that. So, where is this space interest coming from? Because it's not so common for such a young kid to be hooked on this.
I mean,
It's just something innate. You found it fascinating. What was
yeah. So back then, I think I was very interested in sci-fi and a couple of ideas around space. I was, of course, already very interested in other things, and since I was very little, I was very obsessed with stuff.
okay?
And that's perhaps how I got also eventually into product. I mean, being obsessed with things, I think, is part of these
helps.
areas.
So
Yeah.
how did you get into product design? Because your steps were in University of Aveiro, then you've been to Politecnico di Milano,
Yeah.
eventually the International Space University, which, by the way, coming edition is happening
Yeah.
in 2022, is going to be here in the Lisbon region. So did your studies help you learn about product design? How did you, get diverted from physics and such hard topics like those and end up doing product?
I think it's a bunch of happy accidents, with decisions in the meantime. I started doing physics engineering, right? I decided that I eventually was not at home there. At here in Lisbon and at FCT, Nova University.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was at a point that I decided that I wanted to actually think about projects, big picture projects. And usually in physics engineering, you're working with subsystems or with a regular high tech
like
experiment and environments. And I was very curious about how to start a project from the ground up. And eventually that led me to, just decide I'm going to change areas. So I can,
So
I didn't finish physics engineering.
right.
And I got into the University of Ubbu and started working.
You end up doing how many years of physics?
Well, I didn't finish the first year actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of decided really fast.
Yeah, I had to, yeah, it's pretty fast. Yeah.
That takes courage, right? Because once most kids, once they get in, and I know this for a fact because I was speaking with the guys from Inspiring Future and also good friends, and they told me, Andre, what happens is like almost half of people in Portugal, they don't get to the course they want to, right? Because of the clauses numbers, they end up going to maybe choice number 2 or 3 or whatever. But then you have an inertia, right?
Yeah.
And once you're there, you get to do friends, and suddenly you have people, and you realize, man, maybe this is just it is what it is. Becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and suddenly you do the first year, and then you think, hey, man, I just did the first year. Should I just quit and go somewhere else? So what is your thought process to say, okay, this is a sunk investment. I'm going to take this out, and I'm going somewhat because going to product design, it's a hard choice. You have to do pretty much everything from scratch first year. Right?
Yeah.
So what was your thought process to take, in my opinion, such courageous decision?
Well, I started talking with people that were working at the university at the time, at Nova, in design and architecture. Some teachers there were doing kind of cross projects. Also, in every other engineering university, you have pretty creative projects coming up. And I found out that beginning I was thinking, well, maybe I'm going to just change to a more like mechanical engineering, or maybe something like biomedical engineering, something more related to the technology of everyday life. But eventually I noticed that a lot of these decisions were being made, decisions I like to make also, because ever since I was very young, I always liked to, for instance, draw things and design things myself. And I noticed that what matched more what I was doing was actually outside of the engineering a little bit, but still with a foot in engineering. And being the person that these teachers that were there, finding these people was very enlightening. For instance, the architects or the designers, industrial designers, or even the product designers, they work always with engineers. They have to understand engineering.
Yeah.
But they also work with the business people. They have to understand business. And this kind of a really passionate approach was similar to me, to what I liked.
And you ended up going to University of Havaido to do what is the name of the course?
I did actually a course in product design and technology. It was very specific. So I was quite lucky where at the time it was mostly focused, of course, in industrial design, but it was very intense still in engineering. So I studied material sciences. I studied mechanics. I studied, I had mathematics. I didn't lose my engineering side there, which was really what I liked about that course. It was very, very cool. But also had the creative side.
Do you recommend it? Do you think it's
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. There's a lot of laboratories there. There's a bunch of things that the course enables you to do that I think is brilliant, especially for people that like multiple-sided things. Not just working on one vertical, but want to do something that is involving all of the.
All right. So product design and technology.
Yeah.
Okay. just in case we have any, any high school student listening to this, do you have to do what, maths, or what is the?
You had people coming in from both sides. I had colleagues of mine coming in from the arts, but also from
So you can get in either with maths or with maybe geometry or something.
I have to say that I don't remember.
Okay.
It was a long time.
Check it out, guys. Go to the University of Aveiro. We might be able to put the link on the post edit. So then you joined the university, the international, much later, I guess. It was last year, the International Space University. And, why did you decide to do it? First of all, people don't know what is the International Space University. Mm-hmm. So it's like this boot camp. It's like 8 weeks or so.
Yep.
Right, and it happens in summer.
The summer program.
The summer program, which is what you did.
Exactly, yeah.
In France, in Strasbourg. So how does it happen? You decided, hey man, this is my path on space. Yeah. I'm going to do this. And
I was postponing for a long time, actually. And it was something I discovered by accident. The same way I decided to change, in the past areas multiple times. I like to research and talk to people in the other side, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of started making friends and talking with people that knew and were inside of the space industry for around 2 years, and most of them told me about this program. The program. So eventually, kind of, I had a lot of opinions on it, and I decided that given my interest in it, might as well go, and it was worth it.
It was,
for sure, yeah.
Did you pay yourself? Did you get a grant? How did you go?
Yes, I had a grant from ESA. From
ESA,
the European Space Agency.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. And you recommend it to anyone interested in space, or you want to give any guidelines to people that are considering the program? Should they go, not go?
Definitely go if you're interested in space, but go thinking that you're going to be the main value you're going to take out of it. In my opinion, many people take a lot of different value out of it, but the main value, in my opinion, is a network. And getting connected with all these people. You're pretty much during these 9 weeks, 8-9 weeks, you're immersed in.
It's a full time.
Yeah, it's completely full time. Also, that's important to say. You have very little time to actually do everything else. I was working at the time, and it was very tough to do it.
So did you ask for?
No, I just did. I did it mostly during lunch times, and any time I had between dinner and night activities. It was weekends as well.
The program or work?
Work.
Oh, work.
Yeah.
So you did work in 1 hour. You did what? Sometimes you.
Yeah. I had help, a lot of help, from people.
Because it's like you have to go there. You have the lectures and have the workshops in place. All right. Excited about the fact that it's coming to Lisbon next year?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think it's an amazing.
Are you going to? Participate in any forum?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was lucky to be part of a lot of things at the ISU. I was elected class representative, which is something that is fun. So there's always a part in the ISU summer program, which is the alumni weekend. So it's a weekend where a lot of people from all over the world just come and meet. Definitely going to be there. I've already talked with the people from the organization coming up, and I'm seeing where I can fit. I just want to help anyway. I think it's an amazing program and brings so many amazing people to the city and to the place that the program is at. If you think about it, you're talking about around I don't know if it's 100 or 60. It's a large amount of people coming in every week from different areas of space industry to lecture and to give workshops. And these are experts, right? These are people that are, at the heads of their game. And just getting all of these people here, it's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity to speak about the things you like with the experts that've been there. We had lectures from Jeff Hoffman, which was one of the astronauts that fixed the Hubble Space Telescope. Him was teaching us about zero-G stuff, and we were like, yeah, well, this guy knows his thing because he's been there. It's a bit overwhelming sometimes, because you could of course have the same lecture from a person that is a theoretical physicist,
Mhm.
but it's not the same.
Not the same, sure.
Yeah.
So, what do you enjoy most about your work nowadays? Why do you feel happy?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I was not happy, but that's a good question. So I think the main thing is, of course, solving something that helps people a lot. Like seeing people be benefited by anything you did. Like a lot of the things that kind of in the beginning I thought were going to be interesting were not in the end. For instance, when I was starting my career, I thought the interesting part would be like,
Yeah, welcome to Korea.
yeah. I thought like, well, the interesting part is going to be actually designing something and seeing it being developed and manufactured and launched, right? Well, no, that's like that's the anxious part. What you want to see in the end is like people saying, well, this really helps me. This changed my life is one of those things that when you hear like, oh, damn, I'm in the right track here. I did something right. But yeah, I think that's something that's definitely the most interesting.
All right, so I have a tough question. At least I see it's a tough question, right?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Yeah.
Which is also if you have like 3 months, you got the time. People told you go on a sabbatical, have 3 months to learn relatively new technology, or really not just technology. It could be just anything you want, really.
I know.
Which, what would you choose?
Well, there's this thing that I'm really always thinking. This is like the ISU. I've been thinking about this for years, which is apprenticeships. I really think apprenticeships are a valuable thing. You don't see enough of it.
No.
I would love, for instance, to just go into kind of a factory, for instance, and learn how to, help build a wing of a plane, or, it of course would be more interesting even to be in, kind of a RS-25 rocket engine site, or maybe at Boca Chica. And I don't care if being in a high level work, but being actually in the floor of the factory or being like in these places, I think is amazing.
What's stopping you?
Well, nothing. Just the 3 months, I guess. I had a lot of visits to factories in my life. I was lucky enough to have that in university. And in my early career, I worked a lot with factories, especially when I was doing the industrial design. And I miss it. I miss the hard work of it, and the realness of it. You learn so much, right? Yeah. But that's a good question. Like the ISU of it, I was postponing it for some years. Maybe I'll just do it.
Yeah, I mean, such a powerful thing when you are postponing decisions that for some reason deep in your heart that you should be doing them, right? For some reason, but life gets in the way, but then you rationalize and it's not something you do, but if it's there, it's in your heart, maybe that means that you should be doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, do you think there's a way you can have innovation without creativity or even without technology? What's your innovation thesis?
Well, it changes every week, I guess. Innovation without technology and creativity. That's what you said.
Yeah, I mean, innovation.
Well, think about it. I mean, if we're going to be very meta here, innovation can be seen in a natural world, right? You see like how the evolution shapes bodies of creatures, and you don't need pretty much to be creative in that sense. You have a machine that innovates. It's an innovative machine.
It's called evolution.
Yeah, evolution, right? So you can think that part of the world is, of course, already this machine. I would say that human beings value a purpose. They think that what they make has to have a meaning and a purpose. And that's where this thing we call creativity comes in, I would say, is the purpose we give to things. And I mean, I started my career with design for a reason that I think was very, very valuable to me. The design, the definition I like about design is this very basic kind of to provide some value, provide some meaning, let's say. And that's like making purpose on things. So you can have innovation, of course, by creating an innovative machine. Let's say you can make, for instance, the conditions for innovation. Because I was reading this book by Alec Ross, one of the innovation advisors to I think it was Hillary Clinton. Yeah, I now remember because I read it a long time actually. But he always said that, well, you can work a lot on creating the innovation conditions of a specific location, but that's not going to guarantee anything. And he said this to an answer to his travels. So most of the time he went to places and people said, how can you transform X city into the next Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
Right? And this is one of those things that people usually talk about, right?
Exactly.
I would say that that's where like this purpose, this creative purpose comes in, and that's the most important thing, I would say. Technology itself, I mean, human beings have always had technology. I think a lot of times we confuse the term technology with other things. Like you'd say technology is short for information technology. There's all sorts of technology.
Yeah, there's this great book, which I'm still reading, which is, the author has this thesis where, the most basic technology humankind has developed is language, right?
Oh yeah, that's
right. And surprisingly, humans have been around for, 2 million years. Homo sapiens maybe just a little bit less than that. But language has been with us for 100,000 years, maybe 200,000 years. So it took us, most part of 1 million years to develop language, and Homo sapiens without language.
Yeah.
So, but the whole thesis of the book is that it took us a long time to develop some technology that we now take for granted. So if you consider writing, after we have developed language 100,000 years ago, we took 95,000 years to develop writing, because writing has been invented 5,000 years ago or so. Some technology that we now take for granted, very basic, it's with us as a species for relatively very, very few time. So quick break here just to tell you guys that if you're enjoying it, you can join our community and stay up to date with next conversations. Feel free to share with what other topics you like to hear about as well. And we're going to leave you the link here on the description and also on our YouTube chat for our newsletter, where you can join the Productized newsletter and stay up to date. So getting into products, one phrase that we got from you is this thing is for people that live in a world that has begun to explore space. It must be as amazing as that. So these are words that, it seems that you start every new project with these words in mind. So is this like a mantra? Can you elaborate on this thought process of yours?
Yeah, it is. Mantra is a good word. I like to stay motivated in the things I'm doing, and I use that. I use that very early, even within since university. I remember clearly doing that in a specific project I did for this. I think it's on the
portfolio.
Yeah, it's on the second project on the electric bike there, that electric spinning bike. That was the first one. I thought, well, I want to make something that's for people that are going out into space. So
a early version of Peloton.
Yeah, very early. It was 10, 12 years ago.
Okay. You could be a millionaire by now.
Well, yeah, well. I guess people can look at that like that. The idea was, came to me like that. I was starting to feel tired about the project. I was doing the project with two colleagues of mine. One of them, became a very good friend of mine, and we were very intensely deep on the engineering of this. And I was like, damn, this is really hard, and it's getting a bit messy. But how do I stay motivated? And that those words kind of is a modern way, a current way of explaining what I was thinking.
This was in Avero, right?
I was in Avero, yeah.
And which is, by the way, one of the biggest European hubs of bicycle manufacturing.
Yeah.
Did you get to visit bike factories there?
I went to Arlington back then.
Historical bike manufacturing.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Any learnings
from Arlington?
Yeah, from those visits.
Oh, the visits. Oh man. I think that is the reality we don't see, right? Where it's kind of like how a lot of people talk about usually about food and about how food is made. But sometimes we forget about how things are made and the reality of the things being made and the people that are there making those things. And it can be amazing. I remember going perfectly to this, I think it's Simald's metallurgy. Yeah, it's the part of Simald that actually makes the molds in Atlanta. And it was amazing. It had like all these robotic arms, cutting big chunks of metal, very high tech even back then. At the same time, I remember going to one or two factories that I'm not going to name, and I felt, man, these people are working in the conditions of the Industrial Revolution. Like you'd see like very lit areas of these factories.
So some of these factories are still a bit old school.
Yeah,
not all of them.
But you have here and there like these things, and it's very interesting to understand that that's where some of our products are coming from, and how that's actually still the product you're making, right? So when you design something, when you think about that, I mean, these days it's all part of the same package, right? People are much more aware of the things you're making.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the projects I did at CycleHack, CycleHack?
I don't know. No.
CycleHack's like a hackathon for cyclists.
Okay.
And cyclists. So I did this project called Biking on Mars, which was a bike for cycling in Mars, and the rationale for biking on Mars. I think it's like probably one of the stupidest ideas ever. But I'll be very much interested in discussing on cycling in Mars with you.
38% gravity is going to make
it difficult, but but there's like lots of good news as well. But anyway, I don't want to hijack the conversation here.
Cool.
So, can you tell us about the planning for your smart project and how do you do it? When do you start?
For which project?
For whatever project, because I have so many projects, and most of these projects that you have here on the website, they start with some sketches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you do some sketches, I guess, on your iPad or something.
No, iPad. Yeah. Before
on your iPad.
Yeah.
So you do it on your iPad, and then what's next? After sketching, after you're doing this very initial mock-ups, how you go phase 2, which sometimes might be the 3D renders and something like that.
Yeah, I mean, sketching has stayed with me. I haven't done, of course, always the same type of project. I've worked in hardware, as you see a lot. I worked in software as well, and I still do a lot of sketching. And I think it was always a big, like one of the skills I value the most I have. Because it just is both is a thinking tool, is a communication tool, right?
Yeah, it is.
And when you use it as a thinking tool, you can really accelerate the thing you were talking about before, like creating something that is quickly interesting. And I'm saying sketching more than actually, going, for instance, a lot of the tools for creativity have really just become amazing, right? I mean, these days you can design, for instance, if you're making an interface on Figma, you're immediately creating something that's very clearly very similar to the end goal.
Very high fidelity.
Very high fidelity. But when you start by sketching, you have this mistake feedback loop. Like you do a line, it's wrong, and your brain sees, oh, but wait a second, this looks like that, and it creates a communication between your hand and your brain that you're not
very real time.
Yeah, very real time, and you don't have to commit to what you're making. If you're for 15 minutes making a series of like buttons and systems in your Figma file, you're already committed there, and
your process is starting with some paper sketching on your iPad, just sketching some designs, layouts, or if it's a physical product, I guess.
Yeah, that would be the way. I guess before that is just talking with a lot of people and getting the information and data. But that's something that I even sometimes start doing at the same. I even start sketching sometimes at the same time listening to people.
You've always been a sketcher, or you learned this skill at university? Right?
No, I was always sketching things since I was a very, very small person. Young, since I was like 4 or 5.
Yeah. So where do you get your inspiration from? Where do you get these ideas for all these products that can be seen on your website? So most of these products are connected with space, robots, products for the future. even solar power, hydrosphere, hydroponic agriculture, 3D printers, etc. Can you tell maybe our listeners the story behind Aqua and how it works? So what is it? And
there was a project that was done in a very interesting context at the Politecnico di Milano. This was basically a kind of a big trend back then called autoproduzione, where you just develop not only the product, you develop the company, you develop the POS, you sell the product, you develop the value chain, all by yourself. It's kind of like a hard. Back then they called this, but today is the hardware 101 startup kit. And the students in this class were, just given the goal of making it anything. And this was the outcome. Actually, the materials and all that were sourced in the Milano area. And I went to a couple of the artisans to actually confirm I could actually make it. I made a prototype, a working prototype with an Arduino. And the goal was just to say, this was in 2011, I think, but it's something that's happening a lot now, which is the idea that people can actually produce some food at home eventually in the scale, but not only at home. So it's a modular system. As you can see, there's a hexagonal structure to it. You can scale it up to be covering a whole wall of a barn, for instance. But it can also make it very small and put it in your balcony.
This project stayed at the conceptual level.
Yeah, at prototype level. Yeah. I didn't actually make any sales on it. No.
So one of the things that surprised me a lot about your process and lots of projects you have at your website is really the divergent thinking and the way that you can see space, and then you can see solar power, and then you can see hydroponic sustainable projects, or you can see Edtech projects, drones, spacesuits, and so on and so forth, fashion tech. Is divergent thinking something you believe, or you just have this mind which goes all over these places?
Well, I try to use that a lot. So I think it's one of the things that really motivates me. It's to keep my mind fresh and interested. Having a very different project coming in is really insightful for anything else you're doing. So there's this kind of cross-pollination of ideas, right? I've been always a big nerd in a sense. I've always loved to think about what the future is going to be like, right? How can you be excited about the day of tomorrow, right? And
a little bit of Leonardo da Vinci, right?
You
go here, you go to the helicopter, you go to the gun machine or whatever it is. It feels a little bit like, for sure, when you go on your website. So, but what kind of resources do you turn when you need inspiration?
Conversations. I think it's the main resource, main fuel. Having conversations with.
But do you have any structured form of having those conversations, or just happen to know lots of people and have lots of conversations? Wow. Especially now with COVID.
You have to work hard.
You have to work kind of harder to make it happenstance.
Yeah,
right. It just don't happen to bump on people.
Yeah.
Although we did the other day.
That's right.
It was spiking.
Yeah.
So what's your structure? Do you set meetings with specific people? You have schedule specific hours of the day. You have new conversations with people. How does it work?
I have a structure in my head that never happens, or very seldom happens, which is try to have a scheduled interesting conversation outside of my work per week at least. But what usually happens is those conversations come to me, or it sometimes doesn't really happen the way I'm planning. But when I really feel like it, I do that. And also because, for instance, some of those projects that you see there actually moved me into researching, and I wanted to have these conversations happen. And I've been of course going through the process of how do I get this going? Do I harass people on LinkedIn and just make them talk with me, which of course was something I did, of course, and I still do. But the structure I think that's important is try to make friends with people in areas you really like. Because first of all, you're going to be good friends with them. You're going to like talking with them, and you're going to, increase your network range by 10x probably, because they're going to be outside of your realm.
Talk with people in areas that you like.
Yeah.
Let's quote that. Maybe tweet about it. All right. So what do you think is the most creative thing you've ever done?
Oh,
that's one of those questions, right? But do you have any favorite, something that you really hold dear in your heart?
Something. Man.
Or maybe the opposite. Just tell me about a time where what you consider to be a very innovative idea didn't work out, and what did you learn from it? Maybe that's easier.
Oh yeah, I mean I have plenty of
failure stories.
Failure to launch.
Okay.
Yeah, failure to launch is a big one.
Just one.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't say that I consider these failures something that is dead, because I like to restart projects now and then if I see that the world is different and perhaps things can start.
Maybe timing is there.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe the wave is there.
Yes.
Yeah,
you can write it. Yeah, you can surf it. Totally. Yeah.
Are you into surf, by the way?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Just surfing this morning.
You were.
Yes.
Oh, God, man, I wish.
Oh, it was good today.
Here?
Yeah, in Caparica.
Caparica. Okay. So you just see the wave conditions every day, and if it happens to be good, you go to Caparica and
I try to go 2 to 3 times a week, even depending on if it is within my reach. If it's too small, sometimes I also go just to make a stance.
Chill out. And,
yeah.
It's super important. Yeah. So what do you think has been your star product or the project that you are most proud of? And I know that you're still very much working as a product manager for and head of product for Ubbu. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Not necessarily implying that is the project.
I mean, I'm really proud of what we did at Ubbu, by the way. It was done with a small amount of resources, if you think about it, and it was done for scale. Ever since. I would say that
it's a product. So people don't know what is Ubbu. Yeah. What is it, Ubbu?
So Ubbu is pretty much a all-in-one app to learn how to code for young ages. It starts from the very basic concepts and goes all the way to whatever you would like to make. Usually, for these ages, kids are very interested in making games and video games. So that's one of the
so age ranges being from
it's 6, 7 up. So usually 7 is a good one to start if you're looking to direct to consumer. We also sell to schools and to governments
all the way until you're 15.
Yeah. I would say that we have a kind of a hard stop at 12, but that's just something we do at schools. In the consumer market, we saw that the kids keep using it until later, and that has opened up some opportunities of making things like more interesting courses. We're thinking a lot about making courses in fintech, making courses within like data science, so something that's more specific
for
our
kids.
Class. For kids, yeah.
Okay, blockchain for kids.
Yeah, well, it's something that's been around.
The other day I was visiting BGA, which is the Brave Generation Academy. Are you familiar with those guys? But
I've heard about it. Yeah.
So it's like one of those, they're trying to do schools a little bit different. And I was speaking with this 14-year-old kid, and he told me, well, I asked him, why are you here, right? Why are you doing this kind of school? Because, it's a school where you can kind of choose your own schedule. You can go when you want, you can leave when you want. So as I'm investing in crypto, I'm investing in crypto. So I want to have my own schedule so I can have my time for crypto. It's like 14 years old. It's like, God, man, this is crazy.
And they have a lot of barriers that they know they just. For instance, you cannot really have an account at Coinbase at that age. You have to do everything by hand.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe he's using his parents or something like that.
Or maybe he just makes his own wallet. Puts money. I think also having barriers is interesting. Especially for, as you mentioned before, like creativity and innovation. Having some barriers is sometimes a fuel for motivation. But there's definitely an opportunity there, I would say. Kids are very familiar with parallel economies from gaming, for instance. They've been buying
before the real economy, right? My kids are 5 and 6. They're like, can I buy this on Minecraft, or can I buy this on? Like,
Yeah, I mean, digital assets right now, honestly, are
It's their first contact is actually digital assets. That's something I never thought about.
Yeah.
True. One of the things we have here in Portugal, at least in high school, related to computer programming, is that one, computer programming is not part of the curriculum.
Mm.
And in my opinion, most strikingly, it's not part of the high school curriculum. So even if you are 15 or older, pre-university,
Yeah.
you're not required to do any kind of computer programming. So you can go fresh to the university, even for let's say computer programming or computer science, and they have zero knowledge of how computer works, how to build a program, how to what is an algorithm, the very basics. Don't you think that computer programming should be one of the core competencies of the actual educational system, not something that schools, especially private schools, end up buying as an afterthought or an add-on for?
Yeah. I mean, that's what we've been doing in Ubbu, by the way, at the schools. I mean, we don't have half of the we have half of the school clusters in Portugal using Ubbu, and a lot of private schools with that motto of trying to bring computer science to the early classroom. And the main goal, I think, I mean, this has been our kind of our vision since very early, is okay, there's a huge demand in the industry. There's a huge demand in the parent side. There's a huge interest in the kids. The way it's delivered is the problem. It is sometimes too complicated to be just given to a teacher that hasn't been formally trained in computer science. And usually in younger ages, that's hard to find teachers that are very good educators and at the same time trained in these concepts. So that there's always been the kind of the goal. I think that the main goal here also for computer science and programming is not actually to make this kind of motto of everybody's going to be a coder in the future. That's not going to happen. That's not what I think. I think that everybody's going to be technologists. Like if you think about it, the references you said before, right? When the printing press was invented, it was thought about something still for the few, and writing was still for the few, right? The technologists of the past are the regular people of today. These basic skills is something that we consider basic, but they were once very high tech. And I think the same thing is happening now with coding. It is something that's more about understanding the concepts than actually being able to program in Python specifically. A lot of the people in the future perhaps are going to be programming actually in visual coding, not perhaps in using.
Are you bullish in no coding?
Well, I don't say that that's something that replaces coding itself, of course, but it's something that a lot of the people that are not programmers that are going to be doing, programming in, for instance, their daily lives, perhaps on an information station somewhere. They're probably going to be using some logic system that's very simple and ideally doesn't require a lot of learning to actually, get it started. A lot of the visual, no code environments are using more and more these concepts, and it's becoming a wide use kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, that's something good for the engineers, because the engineers, they want to focus on what's the end, kind of high level, the edge of their field, right? They don't want to, program websites forever. A few years ago, people would hire front-end engineers, like high profession, top of their game to make.
Just go on Squarespace or Wix to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Regular joke. So, what would you like to design or project among the things that you have not done yet? So, what's your secret project there that you're aiming to do next?
Well, you kind of hinted already to a couple of things that I'm very interested in. I am honestly also in a moment where I'm looking at a couple of different things to do. Last year, I started an idea around kind of system engineering based software, but it is a difficult thing to enter, and I've looked ever since into niches within kind of the future of human-computer interaction, especially human-robot interaction. So future of work in the field. That's one of the things I'm interested in. It's like this. A lot of people talk about telepresence these days as something that's interesting for the metaverse, but I think it's interesting also for real things, right? If you think about it,
a lot of the
to control
to control
robots in the field.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. You know, like you're always going to need, at least in the foreseeable future, some agency in the field, even if the machines are completely autonomous, right?
Mhm.
There's going to be some human agency there, and being able to do that, I think, is very interesting. Another area I would say, of course, it comes within space, and I'm looking a lot at the changes that are coming right next to us. I mean, a lot of people might not be into the space sector. A lot of people might be, but everybody has heard of SpaceX, and everybody's hearing all about what they're doing, right?
Exactly.
And that's a big change, I would say. That's something that hasn't happened for the last 15 years. People didn't know what programs were up after the space shuttle.
Yeah, space stopped being exciting, maybe 40 years ago. It's maybe.
Yeah. I mean, and these days, not only you have all these, big shot millionaires going to space, you have, for the first time, space first products being sold to regular people. I think, for instance, a lot of the products that people usually have trouble to see that their space products already have been here for a long time, right? Being the communication products that we use every day, or GPS is a very clear winner. But
yeah, there's a point definitely for space tech. But lots of people, as they see these billionaires going to space, they argue, well, Mars is a place on Earth. It's called Sub-Saharan Africa,
Mhm.
or whatever it is, where lots of people still don't have basic. So we're trying to bring water to Moon, which is very expensive to go to lots of these countries, and there's no proper sanitation. There's no proper water infrastructure.
Mhm.
Even I was in Cabo Verde some years ago, and one of the islands that is Boa Vista Island. So you have the tourism infrastructure, which works absolutely great.
Mm.
So all tourists going there, they have water, sanitation, and so on, and power. But then all the people working in those hotels, and don't take the question as a confrontation. It's just how can we eventually help these people that are, they were very ingenious. They were very super ingenious. So they were having these entrepreneurs, and because there was no power distribution, what they would do, they rent generators, and they would do, this distribution of electricity to the houses with this rented communal generators. They would have communal water stations. They would have communal filter stations, and so on. Obviously, unfortunately, no proper sanitation. But the question is really sometimes, space is really inspiring, but shouldn't we be directing some of our brain power to some of these very pressing problems that we still have here on Earth?
I mean, that's a very
I really don't think there is a dichotomy. I think those things can be attained. It's just that lots of people are still shocked by this billionaire's agenda, and you can go on Twitter and just follow the whole controversies of stopping food shortage and stuff like that. I'm not even going to that direction. I'm just trying to understand that designers like you and engineers are really crucial to bring some of these technologies that have been developed in the 60s and the 70s for the space program, fuel cells, water filtration, even advanced sanitation to people, even bike and mobility technology, right? Because most of these people have no other means of mobility other than walking to places on Earth where you have people, and
there's no infrastructure.
There's very little infrastructure, very little government support.
There's something very interesting in the question of infrastructure, and I actually, that's one of the things I was going to go into because this weekend I was actually having a conversation about this. There is a dilemma of innovation, usually in these areas of infrastructure, right? It comes from, will I invest now or wait for a better technology later, and it's going to be cheaper, the investment. In the meantime, I suffer. But when I invest later, the infrastructure is going to be so much better. It's going to last so much longer that it just
cell phone technology being a
good example, right? Yeah. You have a lot of countries that benefited from that, from
they just
waiting later
to the cell phone technology,
and they didn't do all of the other ground stuff. And if you think about it, I mean, there's definitely a lot of space stuff here, because one of the big interesting things about space technology is that it's increasingly more interested in making autonomous, self-sufficient things that don't require, like big grids. One of the projects that I have there, and we were talking about it like a lot this summer, was how to make a lunar base sustainable. Main problem of making a lunar base is energy. You think about it. Well, the moon has a lot of sun, right?
Right.
Well, it has for 14 days. Then has a 14-day night.
Right.
And
battery is probably not going to make much difference.
You have to have a big
there were
supply,
some
right?
plans, I guess, even in the 60s, to take nuclear power to the moon.
Well, there's plans now. And that's pretty much where we're at right now in the future of energy, right? Energy, for instance, coming from let's say advanced sources such as high, like efficient small nuclear reactors, like the SMRs, are something that's still being talked here on Earth, but would benefit enormously remote locations. There's a couple of companies actually doing that right now,
working on it, right?
Yeah.
Developing,
and that's space technology.
That's space technology.
That's being used on Earth, and I would say that that's where I think there's.
Although I would not recommend going to the favela and putting a nuclear power generator there just in case. Maybe that's not the best idea. I don't know.
It is a questionable thing. I mean, the problem of nuclear right now is a big one. I would say that this is one of those dilemmas. Again, infrastructure dilemma. I would say also there's a lot of them in housing. There's a lot of them in food sources. There's a lot of them in sanitation. All of these problems of like modular, simple kind of things that can land from the sky approach is something that I think is very
It has a designer. Sorry, I might be diverting a little bit, but it has a designer. Aren't you shocked about that overlord approach of technology dropping from the sky? Yeah,
drop shipping in your house.
Yeah, if you have this technology which is so obscure, which sounds like magic, it is effectively magic, right? It's a black box. It suddenly powers a village, or it suddenly gives, but people in that village, they have very little agency on that technology. They have no, they cannot fix it. They cannot, tweak it. Aren't you more like an open hardware kind of guy?
Open innovator? Yeah, I mean, totally. I would say going a little bit away from the nuclear side of things.
Yeah, except nuclear. Maybe that's not
because I wouldn't apply it to that.
Right.
But going into these kind of self-sufficient modular things we're talking about, right? I mean, one interesting project. There's a lot of these right now, of course, but one interesting project I was close with a while ago was there's this company in the north of Portugal, JP Sacudo. They do computers. They also did this modular school project that would pretty much have a container, and inside there's a whole school. There's a whole school full with, has internet connection, has its own energy supply with solar panels, has its own series of usable resources.
Systems try to do that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
they did. Yeah, they have like a server
mounts,
full data center on a container.
In the container. Yeah.
So they have the same concept. And sorry to interrupt you, but what's their take on that?
Well, the idea is to pretty much send these schools into remote areas, and they become usable suddenly. So you can bypass the infrastructure need, right? And this is something that I don't think is.
Do they have any specific case in the field, or is this?
Yes. I think I'm not sure exactly what are the locations they have right now. I was hearing about Kenya back then, but it's better to go to their website. I mean, there's plenty of.
They do have a huge contract in Kenya.
Yeah, exactly. There's plenty of these opportunities, I would say. And I wouldn't say that this is just for developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that this is also something that we can look more and more for the developed world. Like one of the big problems we have is the lack of redundancy. Like if the power grid fails somewhere, we're still very dependent on a few power sources, even here in Lisbon, right? And if you think about it, communication is one of the big problems right now, right? If communication were to fail, in a vast area for a few days, what would happen?
Yeah.
Like there's no way, like in the past, people would have their own radio stations There would be radio amateurs that would be able to communicate. Right now, if there's a failure of the communication system, there is no way for anybody to talk after a while.
Actually, I have a friend, and she told me that her dad is a radio ham.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So apparently, the emergency response services, they do have a plan for that, and they do an exercise every year with the radio ham people. And there's more radio ham people that you can actually sing.
That's good.
There's lots of radio ham people out there, so they actually do it, and they do it to foresee that situation. So in case there's a major communication break of the national infrastructure, radio ham guys are to take
save the day
and save the day.
Can they really say? I mean, is there a drill that
they do a drill. Nice. They do a drill on. I think it's a yearly basis, and they it's volunteer, of course, but they are working with the police, with the firefighters to keep the bulk and the backbone of the communication service working in case of terrorist attack or something like that, God forbid. So we're in Portugal, so we should be fine. So one of the projects that you showcase in your website is the Roses base, which is a lunar base designed for repurposing, and I found it super interesting. SpaceX Starship. So that, at least to me, makes lots of sense, because that way you don't have to actually take a base and build like a base. You can just do it. Oh, it was the battery. No worries. Battery's over. Have to. Yeah. I tried my luck with the. No worries. We're going to repeat this. No worries. Talking about technology and communication, and then I forgot to power station. Okay, it should be fine now. All right, so I'm going to start the question again. All right, so one of the projects that you showcase in your website is the Roses base, a lunar base designed for repurposing SpaceX Starships. That makes lots of sense. And my question to you is, so this is something you guys developed during the SpaceX university, the Space University. How far is this project from being actually considered from by NASA or SpaceX?
Well, that's the big question here, right? We were presenting it in Dubai a month ago, and that was the main question that experts did. I have to say that we did a lot of work in trying to reach SpaceX. From several attempts, several ways, from people that work there, people that. I would say that currently the big question here is, of course, the hardware. I mean, Starship is currently under development, as everybody knows, and it's a big investment of SpaceX. There's all kinds of problems all the time arising, right, with all sorts of things. But I would say that the big takeaway of the project is, let's look at what's happening right now. And the big shifts in especially the larger kind of uplink, let's say, area of space, which is the launching side area, is the cost of mass to LEO. Let's make it in a very simple way. Cost of mass to LEO. Until now, cost of mass of a kilogram to LEO was particularly high. Being low Earth orbit. Yeah. I'm going to use perhaps this term a lot. So low Earth orbit, the kind of general way of saying an orbit around 400 kilometers high. It goes a bit higher, goes a bit lower sometimes. There's a couple of good reasons for you to consider this, because it's kind of like when you can say you're in space kind of deal. You're in this type of low Earth orbit. Of course, being too low in this orbit is dangerous, because you get friction and you eventually deorbit. So that's why, for instance, the space station is a bit higher, around 400K. Still, you deorbit, so they have to do corrections, even there. So the big thing is starting there. Getting any material to that height is still expensive. What these guys are doing is trying to reduce as much as they can the price by making a 100% reusable system, which was, by the way, the dream of the space shuttle when it started. NASA was still making the Saturn V rockets, still building them. And they said, this is not going to go on forever. This is going to be canceled, because it's impossible to make, disposable flying buildings filled with fuel that get completely destroyed after they are used, and there's only like 1% of its mass landing on Earth.
Actually. Yeah.
So we want to make something that's 100% reusable, and they sold it like this to Congress. When it went to the engineering side of things, people saw that this is going to be much harder to rethink making 100% reusability in the 60s and the 70s. Eventually, the shuttle was only partially reusable, the main orbiter and the rocket propellers, rocket boosters, but still, that was a dream, and the dream continues, right? I mean, you saw, for instance, very recently, like on Rocket Lab just announced they also partially reusable version of their rocket. With a system like this one, like Starship, you can make something that's quite cheaper, and that was the basic argument. It's like, what is a lunar base in the age of Starship kind of things, and that's the only thing that's missing here is the link. I would say that the launch of lunar bases, the launch of space stations, the launch of satellite equipment is going to change drastically because of this type of vehicles. And this is something that's a broader conversation, I think, which is quite interesting. I met these guys very recently actually met them in Dubai. Really love their work. A bunch of students doing also like concept design work on space. Connect Research Group. They did a science mission, which was aimed at landing on a moon of Neptune. So a science mission with no like ideas of commerce, but a science mission, traditional one, that would rely on the launch of Starship, and they could make something quite different, quite more interesting, let's say, that you can do today, just because of the mass to Earth capability.
All right, but anyways, and NASA is going to pay for the eventual lunar station that is going to be there, right?
I mean, the idea here was
Not
actually,
SpaceX.
We thought about something that would kind of be also using funds that could be conceivable. So we thought about a plan that uses both public and private sources of money. And eventually this consortium would be self-sustainable. So there would be an initial public investment by NASA, and eventually,
just for people maybe listening, it's kind of, you have the old visuals here, but there is that you actually use the SpaceX, the Starship vehicle has the actual lunar station.
Yes.
So it stays there. You cover it with regolith, and then it's protected. It's insulated from solar wind radiation, and astronauts stay there.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do they get back home? If the Starship
there's a two Starship mission. If you go to ConOps, I think it's a bit down. I'm not sure exactly. So the concept of operations, that one, it requires 2 Starships to start the thing. Just because you want to maximize the payload in the first kind of reusable Starship to have human beings, and the second one, that's the one that lands, it's going to be transformed into a base, and it's going to have all the required infrastructure.
The first one that goes there goes without human beings.
Or they land pretty much at the same time. They're made so that the mission is kind of like a simultaneous landing.
Cool. Where does the name Roses come from?
Well, that's actually a sad thing here in the project. During the program, we had a lot of people working around us to kind of put the participants at ease. And one of the main people, the student liaison, was named Oscar Roses, and he passed away during the program. So and we named the mission after him.
Okay, so hope Roses can see this project coming to fruition, whatever it is. So another project is some kind of augmented reality device that you guys have developed for, I guess, the space mission, the moon mission for astronauts to navigate on the moon. And you're telling me that this is something you realized because you started reading the reports from the actual astronauts on the moon, and one of the biggest problems was that they kept getting lost all the time.
Basically, That's a lot of the conversation going on right now. One of the reasons of sponsoring a lunar GPS eventually, but that's a very high expense infrastructure, right, to actually make the lunar kind of missions happen. But you're right. I mean, when the astronauts started coming back, and even during the missions during the Apollo, there was a lot of kind of confusion on the moonwalks, especially regarding the efficiency of walks. A lot of the astronauts started to report difficulty in finding the locations, and this was observed in the EVA times. So one of the big, there's a couple of different problems. The research around this is called Lunar Psychophysics, so it's a funny name, and goes around how we perceive the lunar environment, right? The psychophysics of it. Big problem first is you do not have a lunar magnetic field. The moon doesn't not, is not happy. It's not helping you with compasses. Also, you do not have a GPS, of course, but you do not have also like familiar references. So when you look around, for instance, a city or a forest or something, you see familiar references. You see things that you know how big they are, right? So when you see them far away, you say, well, that mountain might be very big, compared to that rock, or the tree is a tree I know, so I know the distance to it, and I can navigate. On the moon, it's nothing like that. First of all, it's a black and white environment, mostly black and white, right? It's a grayscale environment. You have rocks that you have never seen before. I mean, they're similar to those on Earth, but you do not know the size of them. This is something actually they would be kind of the astronauts would do. They would kind of bet to the size of the rocks, how big the size of a specific rock was going to be before they arrived there. And of course, there's all sorts of strange kind of reflecting like visual things happening. So the regolith reflects light very differently from the one on Earth.
So this would be like a augmented reality device with a camera.
Yeah. I'm going on the lunar psychophysics thing. So basically, the idea was to do a thing that would be very simple to develop. Also, would not require re-engineering of any spacesuit that existed, because spacesuits, as everybody knows, take a long time to develop. So this would be something external. We started doing something that would be handheld, but we found out that actually handheld devices have a problem on the moon because they're in the vacuum of space, and that means that the device has to be space hardened.
Right.
That's extra work on the product development side and on the engineering. So what happened later was we, as a conclusion, kind of went towards something more of a handheld device. So something that the astronauts would actually put inside of the spacesuit before even going on the moonwalk.
Right. But why have you guys developed your own your headset, and not use some of the?
That's the thing. You can totally use an existing like Oculus Rift, or not Oculus Rift, but something like more of an AR environment.
Microsoft HoloLens.
Yeah, like a HoloLens, exactly. And the idea is pretty much going in that direction. So it's more focusing on the software itself than developing a hardware solution. As long as it fits inside of the astronaut helmet, I think everything is fine.
Yeah.
Also, that bridges all sorts of kind of product development times.
Makes lots of sense. I mean, fighter pilots are using that kind of tech already, right? Especially for F-35.
Yeah, it was a good example we used. Yeah.
You did? Okay,
Yeah.
you know that. So one of the other projects and now talking a little bit about aviation was that actually the this chat concept that you guys you developed, I guess. And what's the difference between this and some of the Airbus Zero E concepts that have come up, which are very similar?
Yeah. Well, that's basically just a study. It looks a lot like the concept on the flying wing, which is currently being developed by Boeing, that uses this full body kind of design, and it was more about like a study on the exterior versus interior. I don't have the interior there, but it was more of a study, and it's very informal. It doesn't have really nothing around it. It's just a study. I just put it there because I like how the animation looked.
All right. Are you familiar with a Portuguese product company called Alma Design?
Alma Design, yeah.
I think they're very happy.
They're very good on aviation. They worked a lot now with company called Eviation, which won a couple of prizes there. They have an amazing design. It's a kind of intermediary size vehicle, not really a light plane, but more of a multiple passenger vehicle that can take off from a small airport and land on another, completely electric. And yeah, that's kind of a interesting direction they're making it.
All right. And speaking about electrification and going a little bit into sustainable tech, are you aware of the project of Pelosa, which is still a concept project by Mark Luer, founder of Jet.com? They want to create a new city from scratch for 5 million people. And yeah, my question to you is really how do you think projects like this can actually come to fruition? Are you
Yeah.
really into this kind of moonshot projects, because they only seem to need something like, I don't know, $100 billion to make it happen.
So simple.
I mean, you've been to Dubai, which is a
Yeah,
good example
well,
of
yeah.
a city that has been born
Mhm.
in the last 20 or 25 years in the desert, and now it's this magnet
Mhm.
for lots of people, millions of people.
Mhm.
But this kind of moonshot projects, this sounds really crazy for lots of people.
Mhm. Yeah.
Are you
I
a
mean,
believer?
Yeah, I think definitely the question is of course interest here, right? I mean, one of the there's an interesting. I was just hearing this like a while ago. Very interesting series of podcasts on the future of cities by the. It's actually the Founders Fund VC guy. I forget his name right now, but one of the main people there, one of the main partners. They have a big interest in the future of urbanization,
Mhm.
and they invited a bunch of people talking there. And one of the like kind of axioms there is the development of future cities from the ground up.
Hmm.
So something that would be eventually partially privatized. So something that companies could do, and do it in a sustainable way as well, that considers the overall benefit of the inhabitants of the city. It doesn't require the just completely public model of urbanization, which is I think is quite interesting when you think about it, because when you look at moonshot projects, especially when you look at, for instance, something like Dubai, there clearly has to be an alignment of a lot of interests there, especially in Dubai, where there's still, of course, a monarchy that decides to put the money where they want.
And it has money.
And they have. I mean, they
Well,
did.
They did, and
They did.
there's
Yeah.
rich countries.
Yeah, I mean-
out of Dubai, it's very specific.
Yeah, it's a very specific situation. I would say that moonshot projects in general are quite. I like the idea of moonshot. I like the idea of starting something or investing in something that requires investment.
Mhm.
And that requires investment, and nobody's putting money there because perhaps there's no clear immediate economic value. And there's a couple of projects like that. Of course, we were talking about before we started talking here on this podcast about the X Prize projects, right?
Right.
And a lot of them are going around this, right? And there's plenty more. I mean, there's ones that go further away. Like one of the ones that we were talking. I think the Edge one is kind of either Breakthrough Starshot or Limitless Space, which are kind of moonshot funding projects for things that doesn't even exist yet. Like the physics don't even exist yet. So a couple of people doing investment on research for how to make something move faster than light, for instance, or how to send a probe to Alpha Centauri.
Mhm.
Or how to solve, for instance, the energy production of a remote site, or right now,
Dyson Sphere.
or Dyson Sphere. Yeah, those are the very limit. But the ones that are more achievable, I would say, have some interest there. I would say the X Prize ones are very interesting. There's plenty of funding going there. I like those ideas. Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
And I believe that's coming from a few people that are interested in bettering overall, and they have, of course, some idea that this might succeed. They believe in the stake, and I think if it wasn't for them, it's very hard to just rely, of course, on the bottom up approach. So I think both cases should exist, right? I think the kind of this more privatized bottom up, decentralized way of making urbanization, solving energy problems, solving housing problems, is should exist, and creative people should solve these basic infrastructural problems. But also the kind of moonshot thinking, where you have a lot of very smart people getting together as much resources as they can to put money in this
Mhm.
future of education, or the future of cement production, or the future of CO2 absorption. I think that's very, very valuable as well.
Yes, and one of the projects I found most interesting here, especially because it seems still stealth, is Live 3.0.
Okay.
That's a sort of, I mean, your your website is very, very
Cryptic.
about what it is. Thoughts about the health, technology, and the lifestyles of the future.
Mhm.
You want to disclose a little bit? Open the kimono.
Well, let's say that, I mean, biotech has always been something that I've been researching on the side. I'm very interested, of course, in everything that has to do with epigenetics and biohacking, but it is something that I've kind of not moved a lot. There is a couple of ideas I've had in the past that have gone in this direction. I really think that the future of, for instance, the regular bathroom is going to be the medical center of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing that pitch for many years now.
Yeah.
It doesn't come to fruition.
It doesn't come.
I struggle to measure my body weight every single day, and I have the advanced Wi-Fi. What's going on, man? Infrastructure. I think what the biggest problem is like
Has to be something.
I wake up, right? I go to the bathroom, and I skip the scale, right? The scale is there, but the moment I put my feet on the bathroom floor is the moment I'm being measured. There is no way to run away from it, right? It should be that easy. Because if you have to, now I have to wait, or now I have to do this, or I have to do that, which is kind of, we're going to run away from it.
I mean, if you think about it, one of the clear cases of the reductions of child mortality in the developed countries in the past was the implementation of piped water in houses, right?
Yeah.
This seems to us like something that's okay. That's just water. No, it's basically a medicinal development, right?
Right.
If you also look at the bathroom, the easy thing to see is I would like to have a smart mirror and a shower that measures my body mass and regulates whatever. This seems like the logical thing because we're used to think in high tech here in the developed countries in the West, but you have to think low tech. You have to look at the bathroom and think low tech.
Okay.
And I think that's the big
how does that play with making your biomedical center?
Well, that's the research. I don't think I can say much more.
Okay. Look, one thing that really surprises me, and I guess anyone listening to this, is that you are one person, or do you have a team, or you have you're like Santa Claus, lots of midgets trying to help you.
No, I'm 1%.
So shouldn't you have like people behind you, like conceptualizing this stuff, or working with you, or kind of having more people?
That's a good question.
Maybe a solo guy. That's the way it is. That's the way you want it to be.
No, I like to work with more people. A lot of these things are done in teams,
right.
And I find, of course, people to work with. By myself, I always have these ideas, and I just write them down, or I start developing something, and eventually it comes up that this makes sense. Let's talk with somebody and let's start a company out of it. Sure. I would say that's. I've thought about making research kind of teams in the past. I don't know if it's inertia on my side or it's the opposite of just trying to keep moving somewhere and not stopping in a research center. But it is something that has quite attracted me in the past. And I don't know, maybe it's something I make and build up on part of these projects that I'm talking about. But it's a good question.
All right. So if you're listening to this, you want to be part, maybe just outreach João and let him know. So what challenges are set for the future in terms of your product management, product design, and practice? What are the biggest challenges that you foresee for the next 5 years for this profession?
For the profession
and for you specifically, because you haven't worked. You are a practitioner.
Yeah. So you're talking about
where do you struggle the most?
Where do I struggle?
Managing people? Is it specific technology you want to approach? What's the biggest challenge?
Well, I think usually one of the challenges is hiring people.
Right, hiring.
Right. I mean, we all been there. I think attracting talent is. There are two things, of course, people keep talking about when you make a company, when you make a project happen. One of them is attracting funding. The other is attracting talent, and keeping that attraction moving, right? As you go, and eventually, kind of, I see usually the founder or the main person behind the project as having those two things principal, right? Making the products and making the projects eventually is not going to be something you're going to be doing every single day. I would say that there is, of course, a lot of trends right now that move people towards some directions. And
about Web3.
Yeah. For instance,
Distributed
yeah, totally. I mean,
organizations.
when you go towards like the attracting talents to specific projects, there is a lot of interest in like Web3 and going into crypto right now that pretty much has moved people from all of these like SaaS companies from the past into this
Yeah, it's actually taking the best people out of these
Yeah.
companies, right? They go for the crypto coins. They go for the exciting world. So that said, which founders or startups do you most admire nowadays?
Oh,
And if you just want to focus Portugal, that's fine, because now we have a pretty vibrant community. Or
yeah,
just
people that
elsewhere.
I admire.
I know you're friends with everyone here in the
Yeah.
community. So
Well, I admire group of people.
yeah, you might want to give a more diplomatic answer, but then if you just want to have some people,
I like a lot. Usually there's a lot of focus, and again, I'm from the north, so
yeah,
I like a lot of the
you are,
things
I know you are.
I like a lot of the things that are done,
And
kind
lots
of-
of our unicorns are born
Yeah.
north of Lisbon.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
most of them actually, with exception of OutSystems, all the others are north of Portugal. So remote,
Yeah.
well, remote is a mix, but yeah, Farfetch for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, here nationally, I would say that there's a lot of giving the diplomatic answer. I like a lot of founders from the north.
Okay.
Maybe I just resonate with their
That's
culture.
a semi-diplomatic answer.
And I particularly think it's because this northern part of Portugal is very industrial, is very connected with like the dirty part of making companies. Making a factory is, I would say, or
Most
the
of
hard
these
part.
guys are not really into
No,
fashion,
no,
with
but it's the
exception
culture,
of
I would say.
Sword Health, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, sort of help. Well, I would say it's the culture of making something without. Well, it's hard to explain, or hard to think about it, right? I think it's a way of making something in a very like, I would say breaking down way. But I will not be able to differentiate in a general way between North and South. It's kind of unfair because there's a lot of also brilliant people here in the South. But I really like a lot how a lot of these people think. And also being very simple, kind of in their ways. A lot of these people are very simple in the ways of thinking. Even though they are super smart, they try to be as simple as possible. So aim for simplicity and not complexity. But
Any specific example come to mind, or
well, let's talk about, for instance, I'm going to talk about something outside Portugal.
Okay.
So I really admire this guy, like Initialized, the VC. I really admire their approach. They
initialized, right?
Initialized,
Right.
yeah. This guy Gary Tan is pretty cool right now. He's a very interesting case. Talking about Web3, he's like strong believer behind Web3, but also he is thinking about how the future will exist with Web3. It's not talking about the future is just Web3. No, the future is going to exist around this. And they just secured a $700 million fund right now. They were very early investors in Coinbase, but also invest in all sorts of things. Their latest, so I think they announced this yesterday. Their latest kind of investment thesis is quite interesting because they have several kind of broad areas here. They don't talk about just the future of blockchain. They also talk about building the future that we want to live in. So investing in practical ways of, for instance, sucking CO2 out of the air and making concrete out of it, or investing in the future of simple personalized medicine approaches to things. I like the way they think because they're also very. But what else? I mean, think out of the top of my head.
Yeah. While I was thinking, maybe we can just hear another question. How could you tell us how a good idea can turn into a good business? What's your thesis behind idea to business?
Good idea to good business. I mean,
because that's really the VC struggle, right? If you go to these guys, and I guess even for initialized thesis, which is very bold, lots of those very interesting ideas, right? You have but how do you make good business out of
Mhm.
sucking CO2 from the atmosphere
Mhm.
when CO2 prices are still not very competitive, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's really a struggle, right?
that's a big struggle. I mean, a good idea and a good business, I would say, are very often seen as different things. I mean, good businesses, by definition, are very sustainable and very worthwhile pursuing, while good ideas might be unsustainable in the sense they might be one shots, right? Um, I would say that falling into the idea that every good idea has to be a business is also perhaps a fallacy. I mean, we have a current understanding that everything should be commercial, right? In the future.
Yeah, some people.
I mean that, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the dominant rhetoric.
Yeah, we have that rhetoric in a lot of in the startup industry. I mean, a lot of the things that we have in the world might just be not good businesses for a while, maybe in the future, but for a while they might not be. I think a lot of the interest behind making good business is the word sustainable, and I think that's worth it. One of the things that I usually see people that succeed in making ideas into good businesses, I would say ideas, let's say ideas into good businesses. I mean, there's a lot here, right? There's so many people talking about this. But one of the things that I see is that they are relentless into pursuing this sustainability option. They do not fall in love.
Financial sustainability.
Yeah, they do not fall in love in just the first thing they thought. They thought about something, they change it enough to just make whatever they're making grow, and have more people using it, or having a larger margin make sense to the buyer, having a larger cash flow. I mean, usually these people are kind of, in a sense, more passionate about the business side than just the idea. When you see people that are when you see the good ideas, I would say the opposite can also happen. Like, look at these moonshots we were talking about before, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these moonshots are great ideas, bad businesses for now, but it's really good that some people are interested in funding them. And honestly, it should balance out a little bit, and somehow it still does. Somehow, still people that make a lot of money think, well, perhaps we should invest in the future of sanitation, or perhaps we should just put money in the future of CO2 removal. But I would say that like, for instance, when you talk about before about space, I mean, and we talk about Web3 right now, it's the opposite reality. You go into a Web3 convention, everybody knows how to make the money. They just continuously change and shift the analogy, right? Right now it's gaming. Before it was, ICOs. Before it was something else. And the opposite happens in space. You know how to build things in theory. You know how much they might cost, but you have no idea of how to make the money.
Right.
The use cases, the business cases, let's say, the use cases are known, but the business cases are very cryptic, let's say, in the kit.
Crypto for space or something like that.
I mean, a lot of people
crypto to make money to go to space. I guess that's an idea.
Maybe, yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, I think like the quintessential opportunity for humankind is because we're going to need so much energy for mining crypto or doing crypto or whatever crypto is, that we're going to build a Dyson sphere. That's the whole objective. It's like building a huge Dyson sphere to power crypto.
I would say crypto is actually going towards a lot of more energy efficiency right now. I mean, the new
it should.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, there's already a lot of talks of the main. I mean, at least Ethereum is going to do that very soon in the year too, right? With the proof of stack, and a lot of the main let's say blockchains are betting a lot on proof of stack and other less energy consumption systems. This, I think, it's a human thing. You start out with a low efficiency, high profit thing, and eventually you make it more efficient and more efficient, more efficient.
All right. So, what words of advice would you give your younger self? I mean, that high school boy, 17 years old, that was about to take his physics degree. What would you tell him? Don't go to the physics degree. Go to the.
Well, no, I think that was really a good thing I did.
A mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good mistake. Going into science, I always am happy of going through sciences and engineering. They made me struggle a lot and think. I would say that knowing early enough that you can really learn anything that you want, you can really learn anything, and you can make things out of anything. So I think I learned this a little bit late, perhaps maybe during the university, that I was kind of working. I had courses on, for instance, 3D modeling, and then I was aware that I could draw anything, but I was not aware that this would be transferred into any other thing in my life. That eventually, through learning, you can really accomplish mastery of any kind of technical idea or any way of producing stuff, right? Like eventually, I learned you can generally apply business plan for anything, right? You can, if you know how to make a business plan, you can define any company you want. That's something you just need to learn. It's not something that's born with you. You're and perhaps my 18-year-old self was a bit too thinking that, well, there's things that are, and maybe I was born with this drawing thing, but maybe other things are not really up my alley. I think really, especially the new generation. I mean, I've been in touch with people from like younger ages because of Ubbu a lot, and they are very, very experimental, and really prove that thesis, I would say.
All right. So any books or events or projects that you would recommend to friends? Anything that you're kind of into now that, hey, you should definitely watch this TV series or read this book or go to this event?
Okay. To which friends? The ones that like space?
Your friends.
Okay.
Podcast listeners.
Good. Things that I like. I've been having trouble reading. I've mostly listened now to audio books or to podcasts. I have a
podcast also.
Yeah. Well, I think people should check out Anatomy of Next if they can.
Is that a podcast?
Yeah, it's the one by Founders Fund. Amazing. They have one series on innovation. They have one series on making a Mars settlement with existing technology. Super cool. They have one on the future of cities. Very cool indeed as well.
All right.
Too bad they stopped making the third one. I don't know why. I would say also reading.
It's fine if you don't have anything top of mind. Are you still reading your National Geographic magazine?
Yeah, I mean, it comes every month.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. This was our interview or live podcast with João Montenegro. Thank you for joining us at the Productized podcast. Enjoy your stay. Give us your review on Spotify podcasts or wherever you're listening to us. Share this episode with friends and colleagues. You also have show notes and more episodes at productized.medium.com. And you can join our community anytime. We will share the links in the chat and in the description. Next podcast will be in January for an upcoming year and hopefully very interesting lineup. Keep an eye on our networks or join the Productized Academy. And until the end of 2021, you can still join for free. There's plenty of content and events that you don't want to miss. We'll share the link in the description as well. This podcast was produced by Teresa Sigismundo. It was hosted by myself, André Marquet. It was researched with Katrina Truzik, and the sound editing is by Miguel Souza. Thank you for listening.